And next tonight, something different. Imagine millions of people watch your life come unglued, an all-out panic attack on TV. It happened to our Dan Harris, but his journey of discovery brought back some lessons for all of us about our lives too, and he's telling us about it tonight, Dan.
Hi, Dan. This is a very personal story, as you know, because you were right there when it all started. Sometimes there are things holding us back from being happy, and we're not aware of it until life hits us over the head with a frying pan. And that is what happened to me.
From ABC News, this is Good Morning America.
Welcome to the most embarrassing day of my life.
We're going to go now to Dan Harris, who's at the news desk. Dan.
Good morning, Charlie and Diane. Thank you. This is me 10 years ago. And the reason this is the most embarrassing day of my life is not that it looks like I've been attacked by a blow dryer and a can of hairspray. No, it's that I am about to freak out on national television. Health news now. One of the world's most commonly prescribed medications may be providing a big bonus. Researchers report people who take cholesterol-lowering drugs called statins for at least 5 years may also lower their risk for cancer. But it's too early to prescribe statins slowly for cancer production. At this point, I realize I'm helpless, so I bail right in the middle. That does it for news. We're going to go back now to Robin and Charlie.
All right, thanks very much. Dan Harris at the news desk with some of the headlines of the morning. Want to go to Tony Perkins now.
Once the fear subsided, humiliation rushed in. I knew with rock-solid certainty that I had just had a panic attack on national television. So why would I tell you this very embarrassing story? Because that on-air meltdown was the culmination of something that had been building for years, something I never stopped to address. It's something we all battle, whether we have panic attacks or not. Call it the voice in your head.
It's where I feel stress or when
it's the inner narrator that can control us.
Highly critical.
Get in the way of living the life we want to lead. For Brian Simmons, it was outbursts of anger.
I would act very reactively, very
For Becky
angrily.
Schmitz, it was emotional eating.
Eating was like my security blanket.
And for a young Dr. Mehmet Oz, it was a racing mind that kept him from focusing on one thing at a time.
For me, saying a voice in the head is too benign an expression of what really happens. That massive cacophony that we hear, deafeningly loud.
Does it surprise you at all how much time we all spend fixating on these self-defeating voices we hear?
I've always been surprised how much time we spend wasting on the voices in our head telling us we're not good enough.
In my case, like many Americans, my inner voice was pushing me to succeed. Annual New Year's party in New York. This is me in my late 20s.
Thank you, Dan. Dan Harris.
I had my dream job, but I also had doubts about whether I was good enough. But it's hard to do that. All right, I'm going to try it. 3, 2, 1. My solution? Become a workaholic. After 9/11, I volunteered to spend years in war zones where I covered the heroics of our men and women overseas and got a real taste of both the horror and the adrenaline of combat. After years of always barreling forward, when I finally slowed down, it was as if my mind revolted and I got depressed. And so in my free time, I briefly but stupidly began self-medicating. And it was those recreational drugs, my doctor would later tell me, that almost certainly produced the on-air panic attack. But losing it in front of 5 million people became a turning point. It set me off on a strange, unplanned odyssey, the kind of search so many of us embark upon for answers, understanding, and strength. Ultimately, it would lead me to something I never would have expected, as it has for Dr. Oz and millions of others.
Going inside my mind is no longer going behind enemy lines.
After a journey that involved megachurches, self-help gurus, and brain researchers, what I found is something simple, scientifically tested, and completely free. It's being done by executives, pro athletes, and even the U.S. Marines. It's not a miracle cure, but I like to say it makes you about 10% happier. Much more on that tomorrow night right here.
Right here. And again, Dan, for all of us who've been through this with you, wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And learn about the simple answers Dan found tomorrow on World News and his new book, 10% Happier. And again, don't miss tomorrow night.